Hey, hello YouTube, and welcome to this episode of Learn Everyday English, your roadway to English proficiency. I'm actually in a different locale today, or location. I'm in the backyard, and as I've said before in some other videos, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood. Temperatures are probably in the 80s, not much humidity, and it feels very nice. I thought I'd just come out here and record a video for you. But before I jump into that, there are 3 things that you can do for me. Hey, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and 3, tell your friends about it so that they can benefit from these videos too. Hey, just like you. All right, I'm going to jump into the topic today, and there's going to be 8 things that I regret about studying Spanish. 8 things that I regret about studying Spanish. And do you all have any regrets about studying or learning English? Hey, let me know in the comments below. All right, number 1. Well, let me give you some history and background. I studied Spanish for 4 years in high school, and it was required that all students study a foreign language, so I studied Spanish. But sad to say, I didn't really learn much at all. And after 4 years, I couldn't really speak well, carry on a conversation. I couldn't understand when people were speaking, and I couldn't really speak because it was mainly Spanish how it was taught back in the day or a long time ago. And maybe some ways it's taught still today. It was mainly, I call Spanish by the book, or just using the book Spanish, learning verb conjugations, but we never really practiced or focused on speaking or conversation. So in my opinion, it was a waste of time. So the first regret that I have about studying Spanish, which I started about 5-6 years ago after I retired from the city of Houston after working for 30 years, is that I went back to the same methodology, or kind of the same learning pattern that I knew back in high school. I started doing that same thing, or trying to learn that same way, when I started learning Spanish again 5 to 6 years ago. Because looking back, I think that is the only way I knew how to learn Spanish. I had never heard about comprehensible input before. So for me, it was just maybe going to a university or school and taking Spanish classes. And that's what I initially did when I started learning Spanish. There's a university in my city, and I took one Spanish class, one semester for 3 semesters. So this was like a year and a half. I took 3 classes total, and it was just basically a review of what I had learned back in high school, studying the different verb tenses, how to conjugate verbs, ser and estar, por y para, y just stuff from the book. So my first really year and a half learning Spanish again was just all book study. So I think I wasted kind of that first year and a half. I should have been doing more. So out of the 5 or 6 years that I've been learning Spanish, the first year and a half, maybe even 2, was just mainly book Spanish. So I lost a lot of time. The second thing that I regret about studying Spanish is I didn't really try to learn Spanish again sooner in life. Like I said, I graduated from high school in 1980, and then I never really studied Spanish after that. I did take 2 electives in college, but I took those classes just to make an easy A, we say, because it was nothing new. It was just Spanish I already had learned in high school, so I figured or thought I could just get an A in those 2 classes, and I did, but I didn't learn anything new. And after I graduated from college in 1985, I never studied Spanish again until 5 or 6 years ago. So I wish I would have started studying Spanish again, after high school, sometime before before I retired from the city of Houston. So that's my second regret. My third regret was not trying to speak Spanish sooner once I started learning Spanish again. I remember my wife, who's Mexican American, would always tell me, hey, you need to speak. But I always felt, well, I wasn't ready. I'm not ready. I don't feel comfortable. I don't know or understand all of the verb tenses. I'm not familiar with the subjunctive. I don't feel comfortable with that. I don't know the difference really between por y para or ser and estar, or the preterite and imperfect. I don't want to sound stupid or look foolish when I try to talk. So I waited and waited and waited. So I probably didn't start trying to speak until between 3 and 4 years. Once I started studying Spanish again. And I think that was a mistake, something I regret doing, because I waited until I thought I was ready. But to me, there's really not a good point where you need to wait and start speaking. Some people say you should start speaking at the very beginning. Some people say you should at least have a basis of some vocabulary and know maybe the present and past tense. So my feeling is it may be good to start speaking maybe 3 to 6 months after you start learning. But hey, what do you have to lose if you can start trying to speak from the very beginning? So that was my third thing that I regret about studying Spanish, is that I didn't try to start speaking sooner. The fourth thing that I regret about studying Spanish is that when I started speaking, I regret that I didn't speak more often. So when I started speaking, I went on a site called Conversation Exchange, and I met a really nice gentleman from Mexico City, and we started speaking once or maybe twice a week. It depended on our schedules, his work schedule, more so than mine. But we would speak at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. And the good thing is that we were at about the same level. I'd say maybe intermediate, somewhere on intermediate level, maybe B1 levels, my Spanish, his English. And we were both eager and interested in just trying to improve our speaking abilities. I would help him with English. He would help me with Spanish. And we spoke for at least 1.5 years, but once a week, sometimes twice a week. And then eventually he got promoted or changed jobs and had a lot of work activity going on, and he was a little bit stressed out, didn't have the time he used to, and he had to kind of stop meeting and talking with me. But I wish I would have, been able to speak more than once or twice a week. And I eventually did, because once he stopped meeting with me, I did find other people to talk to, and I think I eventually was speaking maybe twice a week, maybe sometimes 3 times a week. But that was maybe 1.5 years after I started trying to speak. So I wish I would have started speaking more frequently at the very beginning once I started speaking. One thing I'll tell you that really helped me in my speaking is I signed up for this online website called Baselang, where you pay a flat fee. I think it was like $140 a month, and you could speak with as many teachers as you want every day, as many days a week. And I did that for 3 to 4 months, and I spoke at least 3 to 4 times, probably a day, for 4 or 5 days a week. I didn't do it for 7 days a week, but I did it for between 3 and 4 months, and that really, really got me feeling more comfortable in speaking, although I wasn't totally comfortable, and I still had a long way to go and have a long way to go, but it really helped me improve my speaking ability, and the good thing about it, it gave me more confidence in speaking. I felt more comfortable. And two, I was able to speak with people from different countries. And that's my fifth thing that I kind of regret about studying Spanish, is that I didn't try to speak with a variety of people from different countries sooner. Like I said, I was speaking with this gentleman from Mexico City, and that was about it. I think after him, I did meet another gentleman from Mexico, and we started speaking. So most of the people that I spoke to were from Mexico. I did speak with one gentleman for a while from Colombia, and his Spanish was fairly neutral, easy to understand. But when I was on the Baselang website, a lot of the teachers were from Venezuela. I had some teachers from Colombia, from Argentina, from Ecuador, Peru, Mexico, mainly. But I got exposed to a lot of different teachers, a lot of different accents. I got exposed to the Costeño accent, people from the coast, which is, to me, is a little bit more difficult to understand, from Venezuela. Yeah, I got used to people speaking, neutral Spanish to speaking a lot faster. And so that was a good experience for me. So I encourage you, if you're trying to speak to people from different countries in English, maybe the United States, England, Ireland, Scotland, Australia, even India, just to give you a kind of a more rounded experience. That was the fifth regret I had, was not speaking to a larger variety of people from different countries. The sixth thing that I regret about studying Spanish is that I didn't start trying to read sooner. Like I said, the first year and a half to 2 years was just mainly book and classroom study. And I didn't really read, but I think probably after about 3 years, I started reading. I like to read on my Kindle because I can look up the words in the dictionary on the Kindle and highlight words, and very convenient that everything's in the one Kindle device, or the iPad device with the Kindle app. And I don't have a lot of books, say, lying around the house. So I started reading, and I think reading really helps your vocabulary, because if you read consistently, you're always finding new words, and you're always seeing words that you've read before over and over and over again. And I never was a big fan of using Anki, or the spaced repetition kind of memorization flashcard system. But I think if you read enough, and what I would like to do if I found a word I didn't know, and this is just me personally, some people maybe don't like to do this, but most of the words that I read that I don't know, I look them up. And then I write the definition in the Kindle notes for that word and highlight it. I may not remember it, but I think that just taking the time to look the word up and to make a note, reinforcing that in my mind. Next time I see the word, I may not remember it, so I look it up again and make a note. But if you do that enough times, eventually when you see the word, it's eventually gonna sink in. It's gonna stick, as we say in English. So it's just a slow process, but reading is very good to help build your vocabulary. So that's the sixth thing I regret, is that I didn't start learning or trying to read in Spanish sooner. The seventh thing that I regret about studying Spanish is not focusing on writing. And I'm not really a big writer. I hardly write at all, and I have hardly written much in Spanish these 5 or 6 years, to be honest with you. But I wish I would have started doing that sooner, because now I'm always thinking, if I'm lying in bed trying to go to sleep, or maybe I'm sitting around, I hear something in English, I think to myself, how would I say that in Spanish? How would I say that in Spanish? And I try to put it together how I would say it. Then I look it up in my dictionary online, in Spanish Dict or Reverso, and see how to say it. And I realize that that's a very good way to learn, is to try to say something, how would you translate something from English into Spanish? So maybe perhaps keeping a diary of your daily activities, write that out in English. And I think that's a very good tool. And like I said, I wish I would have done that sooner or started doing that sooner. And the eighth thing that I regret about studying Spanish is not trying to watch, say, movies or series in Netflix earlier. And I only started doing this maybe 2 years ago. And I got into it kind of by accident because my wife started to watch a series. And this is what I like about living here where I do. You can hear the wildlife, the bird sounds and everything. Although it is a little bit distracting in the middle of a video, wouldn't you say? But my wife started watching a series from Colombia called La Esclava Blanca. And I didn't really want to watch it because at the time I couldn't understand anything. She was using the subtitles because even for her, Colombian Spanish is different from Mexican Spanish. They speak a little fast and some of the words are different. So she would have to use the Spanish subtitles and read those. But even trying to read the Spanish subtitles and watch the movie was too difficult. I would need to stop the video a lot to wait and try to read, because even trying to read as the movie was going on was too fast. But she continued to watch, and then I started watching it with her, and it was kind of interesting. Then eventually she became too busy with her classwork. She's a professor at the university here. But I continued to watch the series and really enjoyed it. It was very, say, slow going in the beginning, very slow process, because what I would do, and again, this is something that a lot of people probably don't do, but I like to do. If I saw a word or a phrase I didn't know, I would stop the video and I would look it up in my phone, my dictionary, Spanish Dict, or Google it. And then I would write that in a kind of a note-taking app on my iPad. So for every episode, I would have a sheet of paper with words and phrases that I didn't know from each episode. And I didn't review those sheets or notes per se, but I would write it down. And I think just taking the time to look it up, write it down, make a note. Because over time, I found I was looking up the same word or phrases multiple times, and eventually it stuck. Like I said, it stuck in the reading. But it was very, very slow process. Say, for example, a series or an episode that was 45 minutes long took me maybe an hour and a half to watch and stop and start and take notes. So it was a tedious process, but I stuck at it, and I'm glad I did, because I think Esclava Blanca has about 61 episodes. And it took me like about a year to watch those, because I stopped for several months and then started back up. But I eventually watched the whole thing. It was very well-made movie, very well-made series, and I really enjoyed it. And by the end of the 61 episodes, I didn't have to stop the video as often. I could kind of almost read the subtitles through as the movie was going without having to stop and read. So it really, in a lot of the words and phrases, I became very familiar with. And after watching La Esclava Blanca, I started watching a series from Mexico, which is called El Dragón, and I'm at about episode 29, and I really enjoy watching that because I've kind of focused on trying to learn the Spanish from Mexico, because when my wife's Mexican American, her family's from Mexico, or Mexican roots. You know, I'm close to Mexico here, living in Texas. We went on vacation to Mexico. So for me, that's the type of Spanish I'm focusing on. So I noticed in watching El Dragón, they use a lot of expressions, a lot of jerga, a lot of modismos, expressions and slang from Mexico, which I really love because it's kind of the real Spanish, the Spanish you learn in a book. It's not the Spanish that you're going to use or hear in the street. And here I'm learning a lot of different phrases, although it's difficult to learn, but I'm loving it. So I'm at, like I said, episode 29. There's a whole bunch of episodes, so I got a long time to go. But I'm starting now Like I said, I can pretty much read along with the subtitles without having to stop the video. I still have to stop and look up words and phrases, but not as much as I used to. And I'm able now to catch or hear the dialogue better. Things make more sense. It's a lot clearer for me. So that's another regret that I had, not trying to watch movies in Spanish. And I've heard that a lot of people do that, and that's the way people learn to speak another language was watching TV shows or movies and videos. I never really focused on that initially. So again, those are the 8 regrets that I have about studying Spanish. But they're not really regrets in a bad way. It's something I just had to learn for myself and work through. But I just love studying Spanish. It's the favorite thing that I like to do as a pastime, a hobby. And I do it every day and I have the time for several hours a day. And the thing that I like to do the most is watch YouTube videos in Spanish about different topics and subjects. And typically I don't really have to or need to use, and now I don't like to use the subtitles in watching YouTube videos because, as one person said, when you're going to be speaking with somebody in a foreign language, in your case English, they're not going to have subtitles below their mouth or above their head for you to read. So you're going to just have to learn or listen and hear and understand. So again, the 8 regrets that I have about studying Spanish are I was using the old learning method that I learned in high school. Number 2, I wish I had started studying Spanish again before I retired from the city of Houston. 3, I wish I had started speaking Spanish sooner and not waiting until I felt I was ready. 4, I wish I started speaking more frequently or more often. 5, I wish I had started speaking to a larger variety of people from different Spanish-speaking countries. 6, I wish I had started reading sooner. 7, I wish I would have started focusing on trying to write in Spanish sooner. And 8, I wish I had started trying to watch videos or series in Spanish on Netflix or these other movie channels. So what did you think about those? Were those some good tips? Maybe some things that you can apply in your English language learning journey? Or do you have these same maybe regrets that I do? So it's never too late. If you haven't been doing these things or some of these things, why not start today and put some of these or all of these into practice in learning English? Well, that's it for now. Again, there's 3 things you can do for me. 1, like the video. 2, subscribe to the channel. And 3, tell your friends about it. And I'll keep bringing you video and content like this. I've been trying to change it up. We say in English, change it up, or give you a variety of videos or types of video, not just sitting inside the house talking about grammar and expressions and that type of thing. Because 2, it's very important just to learn. Maybe listen to stories like I've said before, and just practice your listening comprehension. I think to me, listening is the most important thing, and that's worked the best for me. And gradually the mind starts to assimilate. We say the mind starts to kind of take all this information, and it starts slowly and gradually making more sense. And I was sitting the other day watching something on Spanish YouTube video, and I said, hey, I'm understanding a lot more than I used to. It just hit me. And sometimes you just realize that all of a sudden that you're improving. But the key, and I heard this again referenced by a gentleman who teaches Spanish online from Uruguay, and he also speaks English, but he said the key is to be consistent with what you're doing. So for you really need to be consistent in studying English. You need to do something every day, even if it's just for a little while. Be consistent. Well, that's it for this video. Leave me a comment below what you thought, and we'll check you next time on, hey, Learn Everyday English. We'll talk to you later. Goodbye.